We at the Everything Red Deer podcast acknowledge that it is recorded on Treaty 6 and Treaty 7 land, as well as on a historic gathering place of the Métis. We thank the elders and knowledge keepers who remain with us today and those who've gone before us. This acknowledgement is small, but meant nonetheless as an act of reconciliation and gratitude.
Local, credible, now. You're listening to the Everything Red Deer podcast, powered by rdnewsNOW. We talk to the movers, shakers, and newsmakers around Red Deer and Central Alberta, then bring those interviews to you. And now, here's your host, Josh Hall.
Welcome back for another episode of the Everything Red Deer podcast. It's episode number 4, and it's our first of 2025. Happy New Year, everyone. Whether you celebrated January 1st, or you're marking the Orthodox New Year, January 14th, or even the Lunar New Year, this January 29th, we're happy to have you listening. Today, we're discussing the Red Deer Rebels and the WHL trade deadline, which came and went January 9th at 6 p.m., and I'm joined by rdnewsNOW's resident Rebels reporter, Ian Gustafson. Welcome back to the podcast, Ian.
Thanks for having me on. It's great to be back and talking about the Rebels. Lots of action this past week for the Rebels, so excited to be here.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that. In addition to Ian, we're also going to hear from a couple of folks who cover the Rebels' Central Division rivals in Medicine Hat and Lethbridge, so stay tuned for that a little later on. So, Ian, the Red Deer Rebels, I don't have this fact-checked or anything, but I think they were likely the busiest team in the entire league en route to 6 p.m. last night. You correct me if I'm wrong, but starting December 31st, owner and general manager Brent Sutter made 6 trades, plus he signed a goalie and an import, which we'll also discuss. The Rebels have had, as the French would say, a comme ci, comme ça season, I think is fair to say. Currently 15-18, 3-2, 4 points back of a playoff spot. And they've received quite a massive overhaul going back to November. Net 7 new roster players, 10 guys out, and up 4 draft picks. Brent Sutter's been really busy.
He has, yeah. You can, it's putting it lightly, really. I mean, you look at just from the moves they made yesterday, I mean, including draft picks, about 12 in and 10 out. So, I'm not sure if they were the busiest, but they're definitely one of the busiest teams. And, I mean, you're going to hear from Brent when he talks about it, but really this team is, hasn't played up to the way that Brent had hoped they would. And obviously he decided to take matters in his own hands and really overhaul this team and bring in some new faces and prepare for the future with some draft picks. And there's a lot of moves made. I mean, among the bigger names that are out of Red Deer, and it's unfortunate because, some of these guys were fan favorites, such as Matteo Fabrizi, Carson Burney, Taylor Tabashnuk. As many people know, he was the young goaltender who came in an emergency situation in playoffs last year against Saskatoon. He's gone, and he was going to have a potential bright future, and I'm sure he still will with the team that he's joined. And you got Trey Wilkie and obviously Hunter Mayo, who is a 20-year-old defenseman. He's probably the biggest name that got moved out. And again, it's unfortunate because he was, been with the Rebels for such a long time and was such a big piece, especially in the playoffs. But you got some new guys come in like Dugan Pedersen, I believe is how you say it. And he's, he's played a few games for the Rebels so far, and he's looked pretty good. Miller Robson has came in for the Rebels. He's going to be a 15-year-old forward. So he's not going to be on the roster till probably next year unless they decide to give him a little bit more time playing with the team he's in. And then a bunch of draft picks as well. Parker McDougall, he's a 17-year-old kid. He's going to be joining them, and Ethan Dundas. And Ty Copeland as well. An interesting thing, I saw Troy Gillard, who's the broadcast and media relations guy for the Rebels. He tweeted a photo of Ty Copeland. He once wore a Rebels jersey as a young kid, so he's familiar with the team. And they also added Keaton Dohanyuk and Nishan Parmar I believe is how you say his name, but I'm not too sure. But yeah, lots of moves made for the Rebels.
Parmar out of Surrey, BC, my hometown. The last guy the Rebels had from Surrey currently playing in the AHL with the Abbotsford Canucks are Steve Baines. So maybe if Surrey is continuing to create some good hockey products, a bright future for Nishan Parmar with the Red Deer Rebels. So yeah, Brent Sutter has been very, very busy. And I mentioned earlier that he also signed a goalie at some point in this last week in between all these trades. And then he signed an import player today, a day after the trade deadline. What do you know about these two signings?
Yeah, so obviously the new import forward that they got today, his name is Gleb Semenov, and he's from Moscow, Russia. But the cool thing about him is that he, was drafted by the London Knights, and so obviously those who follow junior hockey know that London is probably the biggest powerhouse in junior hockey. So anytime you can get a player from the London's fixture is always great. He was supposed to play for them, and I guess had some issues, so he ended up playing down in the USHL with Omaha Lancers. And the London Knights released him before the season, and he cleared waivers. Or not before the season, they released him recently and cleared waivers, and Red Deer ended up picking him up right away. And it seems like it's going to be a pretty good get for them. He's a big kid, like he's 6 foot 385 pounds, so he's your stereotypical Red Deer Rebel.
Yeah.
In this grand scheme of things. So apparently he might be playing tonight, which is Friday night, so you might see him in action. And if not, maybe tomorrow night, which is Saturday, at the Centrium. And then also in terms of who else they signed, they ended up getting a young goaltender by the name of Matthew Condro, and obviously he's been in their system for a little bit. Sean Sutter, who used to be the assistant general manager with the Rebels, he was pretty high on him when he first drafted him. So I think they got high hopes for him, and he's going to go quite well with the other goaltenders they have. They mostly go with Chase Wutsky, but I'm sure Shore will get some playing time here and there.
So it seems like these Rebels moves collectively are maybe a little bit more forward-looking, long-term. The team's record, as noted, maybe doesn't lend to the thought that they're going to be a big contender this season, although you never know. Like, you got all these new faces in. Maybe they have chemistry. Maybe they go on a run. Who's to say? I'm sure Brent Sutter is going to expect each and every single one of these players to give it their all every night, whether they are below or above 500. And we'll see what happens down the stretch here. But other teams in the Central Division, they have, to some degree, loaded up for nearer-term playoff runs. What can you say about what teams like Calgary, Lethbridge, and Medicine Hat did over the last week or so?
Yes, they've also been busy. Prior to the season, or even at the beginning of the season, they all made, pretty big moves as well to get in the mix. But recently, a lot of them have added some pretty big names. Probably the biggest move was made by the Medicine Hat Tigers, who added defenseman Tanner Molendyke. And, he's a draft pick to the Nashville Predators. He most likely probably would be playing in the NHL this year, but some, a cap situation prevented him from playing in Nashville this year, so he was in Saskatoon, and he's probably, one of, if not the best defenseman in the Western Hockey League, and he is, now on his way, or has already started playing with the Tigers, and he was played a lot of years for Saskatoon. Fans probably saw him recently playing with Team Canada at the World Juniors. So he's a big get to an already pretty loaded Medicine Hat roster who is probably going to be trying to push for a WHL championship and a Memorial Cup. You saw the Lethbridge Hurricanes acquire Braden Yeager earlier in November, but most recently they added defenseman Caden Price, who he was also a Canadian World Junior defenseman as well. He played for the Kelowna Rockets. Red Deer is maybe have seen him play at the Lincoln Gretzky Cup a couple of years ago when he was here, when he was playing for Canada then. He's a very, he's another big name defenseman that came off the market now. And you saw the Calgary Hitmen add Sawyer Manio, I think is how you say his name. He's a defenseman, and he was also a co-captain on the Seattle Thunderbirds before he got traded to Calgary. And he won a WHL title back in 2023 with Seattle, and he's also a Vancouver Canucks prospect. So these teams are loading up right now, but this is going to be good for Red Deer long term, because you see these teams make these trades for these big players, and these trades require draft picks. So when you do that, you're really mortgaging your future for the present. So this is going to be good for Red Deer, I think, within the next few years, because the division is going to be theirs to take once these teams end up doing a little bit less once you get past these first couple of years.
I know fans want to see the success like what the Rebels had back in 2016 when they hosted the Memorial Cup here. And, I think it's fair to say Brent Sutter has a plan. Maybe, you never know. Unless you're the GM yourself, you don't really know exactly what's going on in the mind of said GM. But if we know Brent Sutter, he's got a plan. So things will come together here. Yeah, he's he's been doing this for a long time, so he's a smart guy, knows what he's doing, and this is basically just a chess game that he's playing. He's waiting for these teams to fall, and then he'll attack, and the Red Deer will be back on top once again, I'm sure, soon. All right, so tonight the Rebels are in Medicine Hat. Tomorrow they're back at home here for a tilt against Prince Albert. Both nights, 7 p.m. puck drop, and those games can be heard live on 106.7 Rewind Radio with play-by-play host Troy Gillard. But this morning, Ian, you were over at the PV Mart Centrium for a media availability with the aforementioned Brent Sutter to talk about what the team decided to do around the trade deadline. Is there anything you want to say to tease this interview that you did?
Yes, Brent, he's preaching patience right now. So fans just have to be patient and get through this year. And he also still wants to make the playoffs. So patience for these young players to figure out how to play together and playoffs. So that'll be the key moving forward for the Rebels, and enjoy the interview.
Well, Brent, obviously a busy trade deadline day for the Rebels on Thursday. Do you think the team accomplished what it wanted to?
Well, I think it's been a few things leading up to the deadline. Obviously the makeup of the team needed to change. I mean, obviously you don't, to me, with your team and the direction that we're going and how we're playing, the situation where we had a lot of guys fighting their game, struggling in their game, especially our older guys. It was time, and you can go through all the stats that you want to go through. Whether it's goals for, goals against, our power play, penalty killing, our goal differential, puck possession time. A lot of those boxes weren't checked off for me, and we obviously need to play. We need to play a lot better. We need to play a better team game. We lacked in scoring because we just didn't get the scoring from individuals that we expected. Right, wrong, or whatever it may be. It's just reality. So, to me, we added some really good players that have skill, can make plays, are going to be here for a couple or 3 years. On the back end, we I wanted our team to be more mobile. So we've been able to do that with Dahaniak and Peterson, guys that can handle the puck and move pucks. That's really you look at the game today and the direction it's going. It's a big part of that now, right? And I could see it, and we just needed to make changes. And it's easy just to sit here and do nothing and just accept what's going on, but it's not the right thing. And so you make changes. Hey, listen, I'm not happy with our record. We expected more from this group. Expect our team game to be better than is. Like I already mentioned, our where our power play and penalty killing is, and goals for and goals against. It's all, it's all not where it should be. So that's why my responsibility is to work on to get it back to where it needs to be. And at the same time, I felt like we needed to acquire more picks to help us down the road and in the future, and we've been able to accomplish that. So we certainly have checked off boxes that I wanted us checked off through this process, but there's still more work to be done.
Did you do everything that you wanted to do, or was there some that you
I had a mindset and a vision what I wanted to get accomplished. I know the players that are going to be coming in next year that are coming to our team, and they're going to fit right into this mode that I wanted us to be like and start playing like. We need to be a harder team to play against. We need to be a more puck possession team. We need to score more goals. We need to spend more time in the offensive zone. We chase the game too much right now, and that's not a recipe for success. So that's basically adding players to help us in those categories.
Seeing some of the other teams in the division load up for this year, did that play any factor in some of the decisions that were?
No one bit. I don't worry about what other teams are doing. They can do what they want to do. I know what our focus is and how we need to do things, and I believe you build internally as much as you can. We do have some really good young players coming underneath, and we know that. We do really like our young players on our team now. You had a Copeland boy like yesterday. This kid is going to score goals in this league, and he's a really good player. And Parmer is a really good player, right? So you added McDougall the other day, and it was just a guy that's put up big numbers in midget hockey and played the game the right way, and that's why we wanted him in that trade with Bernie. And then the big Russian player, we've been we're very fortunate that he fell our way. So, and again, he fits into that group of kids that we wanted to improve the 07 age group and the 08 age group. We wanted more skill there, be quicker, faster, more skill, and guys that we knew could play for us and provide that to us for the next few years.
So how long were you working on the Semenoff thing?
That's been probably a week maybe. Got a call from his agency and just explained everything, the situation that he was in and where it was at, and obviously we could do it because we have with Pickeranen not being on our roster and being an injured player, so it made sense for us to go down the path and at least do the due diligence we needed to do on it and do all the check we needed to do on it, and we communicated with the right people through the process, and again, he's a young player and he's going to get a chance now from now to the end of the season to show that he can be good enough to play major junior hockey and play at this level in the Canadian Hockey League. And if he does that, then we'll be happy about that, and then we can move forward with him down the road here. So, but we got time to see where it goes. I think the biggest thing now with this group, guys, is that we need to show some patience. When you make a turnover like this, it's going to take a little bit, but I expect the coaches will have things in order and get these guys to gel, and hopefully we can be a good hockey team from now through down to the end of the year.
Is Pickeranen still your guys' player then, or can someone else pick him up?
No one else can pick him up right now. No, it's past the June. Tonight's the deadline date, and he's injured. I mean, he's out for the year. We all know that. We know that he's not going to be back. We know what type of surgery he had, but he's right. He's still on our injury list right now.
Can you keep him on the roster? Would he be yours for next year?
Those are discussions I have to have with the league on that. He can't be on our roster this year because we have our 2 European players. But I got to have some discussions with the league on that and with also his agency.
Well, you were mentioning young guys in 17s. That's for sure. You kind of look got quite a few 17s now, which because you have so many 18s, it's tough to take that many into next year, isn't it?
With 18s?
Well, there could be then 19 next year.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, to me, it was guys. You look at underperforming is not acceptable, and my expectations here for this team and this organization is high. You're not going to win every game, and I get that, but it's the way you lose games that really bother me. I just have seen too much here in the last little while, and that I was not happy with. You can't be inconsistent like we have been and think you're going to be able to get on a good run and win games. And there needed to be a culture change. We needed a shake-up in our dressing room. We need better leadership from the group, and it's the overall group. And there's got to be a higher level of accountability and being team and accountability, and also being team players and play for the front of that jersey. I mean, fans come and watch us play, and there is an expectation here in Red Deer in the way our team needs to play and has to play, and I truly believe in that. And when it's not, then we got to correct the problem. And so that's what I'm doing.
Playoffs are obviously still achievable. Is that still what you're
Absolutely.
going for? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it should be better be downstairs. I want to see. If our team game is, if we had individuals playing well, then our team game will be good, and then you get a chance for that to happen, right? But to this point, we've had too many individuals, and especially with some of the older guys you counted a lot more on, have really struggled, and now some of these changes have been made, and now we got a different look. There's a different culture in the dressing room. Others can take on some leadership roles down there that maybe felt a little reserved before, and now they can take the step, and now it's going to be up to the staff to downstairs to get it all put in place and make it gel and make it work. I know they're excited about the changes, so that's a good thing.
I guess losing Mayo and that is a tough.
Yes and no. Obviously he's been here for a long time, but it gives someone else an opportunity. We got young defensemen, and they got to be given a chance to play. And Hunter's had his up and downs this year. There's times where he's played well, and there's times he's really struggled, and especially here lately. And Hunter and I talked about it. We had a good discussion a week ago. I knew what he was thinking, where he was at, and I knew it was time for a change.
We're back on the Everything Red Deer podcast. Today we're talking all about the WHL trade deadline, which came and went last night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Joining us now is Will Bryant, the play-by-play broadcaster on 94.5 in Medicine Hat. That's Wild 94.5. And he is the play-by-play broadcaster for the Medicine Hat Tigers. Will, thanks for joining us on the Everything Red Deer podcast.
Hey, not a problem. Happy to be here.
So, as I was chatting about with Ian Gustafson earlier, the Rebels were quite busy ahead of the WHL trade deadline, and so were some of their biggest rivals in the Central Division, including the team that you cover, the Medicine Hat Tigers. Give listeners a bit of a rundown of the actions that the Tigers took to make themselves better ahead of this stretch run.
Yeah, so, for the Tigers, it's sort of, even looking back to before the season, it was kind of an off-season of acquisitions for the Tigers. They added a pair of defensemen from the Western Conference, and Jonas Woot and Bryce Pickford, both acquisitions that have been, incredibly valuable the Tiger blue line. They then go ahead and add Matthew Ward from the Swift Current Broncos. They add Ryder Ritchie from the Prince Albert Raiders, and it kind of set the stage for what the Tigers would hope to be, the season that it's kind of become, where they're contending for the top seed in the Eastern Conference and are, in a dogfight in that Central Division alongside, Calgary, Lethbridge, Edmonton, with everything that's sort of transpired over this last, month ahead of the trade deadline. And then with all that movement that kind of had been going on, you look at what Calgary did, adding Tanner Howe, adding Sawyer Minio, adding Daniel Hauser. It felt like, every time there was a trade announced, it was either Lethbridge or Calgary adding somebody, with Lethbridge adding guys like, Braden Yeager, Caden Price, Jackson Unger, even added Wojciech Port earlier from the Moose Jaw Warriors. So the Tigers sort of saw what was going on around them and, weren't standing idly by. They're a team that had been sort of battling injuries all season long, and through that it had been hard to sort of gauge what this roster had looked like at full strength. They had some glimpses early on the year, loved what they saw, and with guys like Hayden Harsani, who'd been injured since October, coming back, actually this week he made his debut as a Saskatoon Blade on Wednesday. They sort of realized that, let's not stand idly by and add some depth as well. So they go ahead and add Tanner Molendyk and Misha Volatovsky. Molendyk, arguably the top defenseman in all of junior hockey in Canada, in my eyes, represented Team Canada at the World Juniors, was named one of their top 3 skaters. Just an incredibly valuable defenseman. His impact can't be overstated. He is one of the premier players, not just defensemen, in the Western Hockey League and arguably the CHL. And then Misha Volatovsky adds the Tigers some much-needed depth up front. It's a strong, big-body, 6'2" centerman that's going to win you face-offs, be very valuable on the penalty kill, and for a Tiger team that has a lot of top-end skill, that really bolsters some of their depth. So it's kind of been a busy year for the Tigers. Even early on the year, they added Harrison Menigan from Lethbridge in exchange for Shane Smith. So there's been a lot of trades, a lot of movement kind of all season long, but the trade deadline, they got the crown jewel of it all in Tanner Molendyk.
With a Brent Sutter-led team here in Red Deer, there's always expectations for every single guy out there to give it their all and try to win. And I guess for some teams in the WHL and in junior hockey in general, like, it just doesn't come together all the time, and teams go through these cycles where they're loading up and they're really good and then fall off a bit, maybe for a little while, maybe for longer than fans like. And as I was saying to Ian earlier, the Rebels, when they're led by Brent Sutter, there's always a plan. But as it stands, the Rebels are at the opposite end of the Eastern Conference standings compared to the Medicine Hat Tigers, who, by virtue of having one more win than the Saskatoon Blades, are first in the Eastern Conference. Do they have real aspirations of going to the Memorial Cup this year?
Absolutely. That's sort of what's been dictated from management, from the coaching staff, and that's sort of what the mandate is from this trade. You don't add a player like Tanner Molendyk to, just get into the dance. That's an acquisition that is indicative of the intentions of this team, which is to be playing in the final game of the Western Hockey League season, win the final game of the Western Hockey League season, and play in the Memorial Cup. And that comes with having a superstar player in Gavin McKenna, not even in his draft year. So that's one thing that I think is really cool about this Molendyk trade, is the Tigers were able to put their chips to the middle of the table for this season while preserving their stash for next year. So this is exactly what the Tigers wanted this season, an opportunity to make a deep playoff run, to build playoff experience, contend for and compete for a WHL championship. And that's where they feel like they can go next year as well. And they haven't over-leveraged their assets for next season. So I absolutely believe that's the intention of this organization and this team. And it is, it's the way that junior hockey goes. Like you kind of mentioned, Red Deer is kind of on that opposite end of the standings. It's a very different league than the professionals in the NHL, where you're sort of able to lock guys into contracts. You're able to have them for extended periods of time. If you're in the Western Hockey League, if you're 21, you're not playing, right? That's the long short of it. So So there's so much turnover, there's so much transition that, teams have to go through those rebuilding times. And it's fortunate here in Medicine Hat that we're sort of, at the top of the roller coaster, heading up to the top, as opposed to, all the way back down to the bottom where they were just three short seasons ago.
Can I put you on the spot?
Yeah.
So Gavin McKenna, I don't know if you've had a chance to chat with him since he returned from the World Juniors, but do you think he has a bit of a chip on his shoulder after the performance of Team Canada and wanting to, prove his worth with the Tigers the rest of the way?
I think Gavin McKenna is just one of those competitors that always is going to find motivation wherever he can find it. That's what's really cool about a player like Gavin McKenna. It's not like, I've never been a Gavin McKenna. We can all think what it would be like to be a Gavin McKenna, right? Where you're that guy. You are the premier prospect, for a National Hockey League draft next season, right? So it's not just he's that good and he doesn't do anything with it. He is always the hardest worker on the ice, in the gym, in the locker room, in film. Like, he is always putting in work to improve his game and improve his team through improving himself. So I think that, yeah, absolutely. Like, even when I talked with Tanner Molendyk a few days ago when he got here into Medicine Hat, he even said in his words that we felt like we let the country down, talking about Team Canada representing at the World Juniors in Ottawa. And I thought maybe that was a little harsh, but I appreciated the candidness, and that sort of does peel back the veil a little bit on maybe what there's going on inside the mind of a Gavin McKenna. And for a kid that's already as talented and motivated as Gav, like, he'd been working for this World Juniors for a while. Like, this had been a goal that he'd stated before the season. Like, when I talked to him in September, he said, yeah, this is what I want, this is what I'm working towards, and hey, credit to him, he was able to achieve it. But now I think not just him, but even like a guy like Tanner Molendyk that sort of said, hey, we felt like we let our country down, was really candid and peeled back that veil to sort of say, hey, like, we might have a little extra chip on our shoulder. And, both he and Gav probably came away with some good lessons as well from that quarterfinal loss to Czechia.
All right. Well, we've been talking with Will Bryant, the play-by-play broadcaster for the Medicine Hat Tigers on Wild 94.5 in Medicine Hat. After the WHL trade deadline came and went last night, thanks so much for joining us on the Everything Red Deer podcast, Will.
Hey, not a problem.
Back here on the Everything Red Deer podcast, WHL trade deadline edition. We've talked to Ian Gustafson for the Rebels perspective. We've also heard from Brent Sutter, GM of the Red Deer Rebels, and we spoke to Will Bryant for that Medicine Hat Tigers point of view. And now we've got on Nevin Soretta, PA announcer for the Lethbridge Hurricanes in his second year doing that. You can also hear Nevin on Wild 95.5 in Lethbridge, as well as 94.5 in Medicine Hat and 104.7 in Cranbrook. Nevin, thanks for joining us on the Everything Red Deer podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me on to chat a little bit of WHL hockey. I'm excited to be a part of the show.
Well, it was a very busy time for the Red Deer Rebels, and the Lethbridge Hurricanes were not sleeping ahead of the deadline. They also had some moves, including at least one very significant one in recent memory. So give the listeners a rundown of how the Hurricanes did to improve themselves ahead of this stretch run in the WHL season.
Absolutely. Well, I think we got to go back a little ways in the season as well. You got to go back to when the trades started coming for the Lethbridge Hurricanes and, making an acquisition with the Red Deer Rebels, moving out a guy like Ryder Ellis and bringing in a strong, talented defenseman in Wojtek Port. That was a huge, huge move to bolster the blue line right away for the Hurricanes. And then a couple weeks later, beginning of December, they make a move, a massive move, once again with Moose Jaw, where they acquire probably the biggest name available in the Western Hockey League, and Braden Yeager as well, one of the better goaltenders in the league, and Jackson Unger coming in. So that move alone solidified, I think, what the Hurricanes were hoping to do this year, especially after the news of the Memorial Cup being announced that that's going to be in Kelowna in 2026 compared to other markets like Spokane, Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, and Brandon that all had those bids. So with the Memorial Cup announcement, that kind of really changed things up plan-wise for the Hurricanes, I would say, this year. So, going out making a splash of getting Braden Yager, Jackson Unger right away before Christmas, it really helped solidify the goaltending for the Hurricanes as well, adding a really solid scorer in Braden Yager. And then with the deadline this last week, it was a crazy, crazy week in the Central Division. You look at every team, Calgary, Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, even Red Deer making moves. Not really for Red Deer, I guess, bringing in players, but, sending some players out. But, big acquisitions there. One of the biggest ones for the Hurricanes has got to be adding World Junior defenseman Caden Price from the Kelowna Rockets. That's a massive, massive move. Also to solidify that blue line, you put him on a pair with a guy like Logan McCutcheon or Noah Chadwick, and that blue line is pretty scary to look at for the Lethbridge Hurricanes. Also adding in a guy like Anthony Wilson, another grit player there for the Lethbridge Hurricanes. I think some of the moves that they made here this year really solidifies what the Hurricanes are wanting to do. They're a good competitive team, and this year, going all in with some of these acquisitions. I think it's pretty easy to say the Hurricanes, they're a little upset with having 4 straight years of first-round playoff exits, especially 4 sweeps in the first round. They want to solidify that team going into the postseason and make themselves stronger, better to hopefully advance farther in the playoffs and, hopefully lift the Edge Cup by the end of the year.
The Medicine Hat Tigers made some significant moves as well, bringing in Tanner Molendijk, and they've got aspirations to go to the Memorial Cup, be there when the trophy is awarded at the end of the day. But Lethbridge is going to have something to say about that, clearly.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, you look at the way that Lethbridge and Medicine Hat have kind of played their games this season. They've all been really good games, really close games. I mean, Lethbridge has the edge, I think, 2-1 or 3-1 so far in the few they've played so far this year. But, I mean, Medicine Hat's not a team to take easy. They are very talented top to bottom. That goaltending duo they have with Switzer and Mennigan as well, that's an insanely good duo there. And it was hard to see Harrison Mennigan go down Highway 3 early in the season as well, trading him to Medicine Hat and getting Shane Smith back. Harrison was our MVP last year. You didn't want to see a guy like that go, but unfortunately, the way the league kind of works, you have to make those moves to solidify who you want as your overagers as well. So it's definitely going to be a fight in the Central Division. You can't even knock Calgary out either. Like, they've been making some crazy good moves too.
And if you're looking at the Eastern Conference standings, as I was talking about with Will, the Tigers are at the top as of this moment, but from 1st to 7th in the Eastern Conference, those teams are all separated by only 6 points. So it's very tight, and the Hurricanes are right in the middle of that with 44 points, just 4 points back of the Tigers. So it's going to be, like you said, a dogfight the rest of the way. What's the vibe in the Hurricanes fandom? What vibes do you get around the arena?
What I'm getting from fans around the arena and just talking with other fans, we're all they all seem excited for the Hurricanes to want to go all in on things this year. Really push to try and get the Memorial Cup, and it's been really great hockey at home as well for the Hurricanes. I mean, the best home record in the WHL. They've only lost 4 games on home ice, one of which was in overtime as well. So easily could have gone either way with that one. It's really good hockey to watch at the visitlethbridge.com arena right now for these guys, and fans are excited to see this really talented team in front of them as well.
All right, we've been talking with Nevin Soretta, PA announcer for the Lethbridge Hurricanes. Thanks so much for joining us on the Everything Red Deer podcast to talk about the WHL trade deadline, Nevin.
This has been the Everything Red Deer podcast, powered by rdnewsNOW. This podcast is produced and edited by the team at rdnewsNOW and Pattison Media Red Deer. Make sure to download our mobile app and subscribe to our free daily newsletter by visiting rdnewsnow.com. Thanks for listening.